ChatGerry, From Scientific Systems to the Human Body, number 1560, the 5th of March 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, category, Personal Health Journey and Biomedicine. Preface: My life has crossed several scientific fields, but the core questions have always been the same: how complex systems work, how catastrophic failure can be prevented. When I was young, I spent about 18 years studying 9 disciplines, including applied mathematics, mechanical and ocean engineering, structural S&D biomechanics, fluid mechanics, solid mechanics, computer science, artificial intelligence, economics, and business administration. Later in life, I continued to self-study psychology 9 years and biomedicine 17 years. Although these subjects appear unrelated, they eventually formed a unified way of thinking. My medical research is not the result of formal medical training. Instead, it is the natural extension of scientific and engineering thinking applied to the human body and organ diseases. In fact, I never attended any medical school. I had no professors, classmates, patients, or institutional support in the medical field. My teachers have been scientific principles, long-term data, and my own damaged body. Educational foundation. 2 mentors that MIT shaped my approach to complex systems. Professor Patrick Winston, director of the MIT Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, introduced me to pattern recognition, machine learning, and computational thinking. From him I learned how hidden pattern inside data reveal how systems behave. Professor Norman Jones, my PhD advisor in mechanical engineering, specialized in dynamic plasticity and structural mechanics. From him I learned how structures behave under load, how stress accumulates, and how repeated forces eventually lead to structural failure. Although their fields were different, both mentors emphasized one principle: understand the underlying mechanism rather than only observing surface behavior. That philosophy became the foundation of my future career and medical research. Career across engineering and technology. My professional career expanded across several engineering and technology industries. My early work involved structural and mechanical engineering projects related to aerospace systems, naval ships, and nuclear power plants. These systems required careful analysis of structural integrity, material fatigue, and safety margins. Later I entered the semiconductor and computer industries, working on electronic design automation EDA algorithms for integrated circuits design. Semiconductor chips contain billions of transistors carrying microscopic electrical signals that must remain precisely synchronized. During this 12 years period I also worked with artificial intelligence algorithms development and large-scale computational models that analyze data and detect hidden patterns. After 7 failed startups, my 8th high-tech company in Silicon Valley finally succeeded and became the most successful business venture of my career. Choosing life over business expansion. By the mid-1990s I had achieved what many people consider the major goals of business life: reputation, influence, and financial success. However, in 2002 at age 55, I made what I believe was the most important and accurate decision of my life. I sold my successful company and stepped away from the high-tech business world. Beyond a certain point, additional wealth does not necessarily bring greater happiness or security. What becomes more important are life purpose, personal health, family stability, and the ability to contribute something meaningful to society. After that turning point, my focus shifted from building companies to understanding my own health and human survival. The transition from business to biomedicine. My entry into medical research began with my own chronic diseases, particularly obesity and severe type 2 diabetes. At one point my BMI exceeded 31. My glucose rose above 326 milligrams DL, and my HbA1c exceeded 13%. Like most patients, I initially relied heavily on medication. Over 20 years period from 1990 through 2009, I realized that medication alone was not addressing the deeper mechanisms of metabolic disorders. I began applying my lifetime learned mathematical, physical, and engineering thinking to my own biological system. Over the next 17 years I collected more than 4 million health data points on my iPhone, including glucose levels, blood pressure, physical activity, sleep patterns, and dietary behavior. I also developed a customized medical AI software on my iPhone to extend and analyze these data automatically. Gradually, my body became a living laboratory where I could study the dynamic interaction between lifestyle behaviors, metabolism, mortality risks, and pathophysiological stress. This research was driven by survival rather than curiosity or academic acceptance. Engineering interpretation of human disease. When engineers study machines or structures, they examine how loads act on a system and how the system responds over time. The same principles apply to the human body. Blood vessels behave like structural pipes that must withstand internal pressure. Metabolic processes resemble complex control systems regulated by biochemical signals. The autonomic nervous system functions like a feedback control or electronic information network that stabilizes heart rate, blood pressure, and energy balance. Within this framework, chronic disorders and their induced mortality diseases can be interpreted as long-term damage caused by repeated pathophysiological stress. For example, decades of uncontrolled diabetes gradually weaken vascular tissue when blood pressure suddenly spikes. The remaining strength of the vessel may no longer be sufficient. My hemorrhagic stroke on June 21, 2025 was such a triggering event. Behavior and physiological regulation. Daily behavior also influences pathophysiological regulation. Sleep, breathing patterns, emotional stability, diet, and physical activity interact with the autonomic nervous system and hormonal signaling. Even simple breathing exercises demonstrate this interaction. Breathing is a mechanical movement of the diaphragm and lungs. This mechanical process sends neural signals to the brainstem, which influence autonomic regulation and a biochemical hormone release. These biochemical signals then goes back to biophysical effects, such as vascular tone and blood pressure. A simple breathing pattern can therefore propagate through a complex chain of physical, mechanical, neurological, biochemical, and biophysical processes. Pattern recognition and health monitoring. Artificial intelligence and pattern recognition also contribute to my biomedical research work. In engineering systems, abnormal signal patterns often appear before failure occurs. The same idea can be applied to health monitoring. One example from my work is the Stroke Risks Triggering Sensitivity Index (TSI), which integrates several blood pressure parameters into a single indicator reflecting vascular stress. TSI equals SBP DBP 45 SBP 120 100. Such a proxy helps translate complex physiological behavior into measurable early warning signals. I now use TSI values displayed on my iPhone screen to detect the potential risk of my next stroke. Conclusion. Looking back, my career has always focused on the same objective: understanding complex systems and preventing catastrophic failure. In aerospace engineering, the goal is to prevent structural failure. In nuclear engineering, the goal is to prevent reactor instability. In semiconductor design, the goal is to prevent signal malfunction. In artificial intelligence, the goal is to detect patterns and predict system behavior. Today, my focus is the most complex system of all, the human body. My goal is simple. I want to make the hidden processes of chronic disease visible so that patients and physicians can recognize risks earlier and act before irreversible damage occurs. For selected dataset correlations. Obesity versus diabetes equals 95% 1/1010 to 12/2026. Diabetes versus food portion equals 93% 1/1015 to 6/2025. CVD risk versus diabetes equals 66% 1/1015 to 6/2025. Stroke TSI versus blood pressure equals 60% 1/1015 to 6/2025. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.